Hello! Welcome to a special GeoTech Hour. I'm not your host for today. I am Dr. David Bray, Director of the GeoTech Center. Your host for today is Stephanie Wander, who is the Deputy Director and Senior Fellow. We welcome Stephanie to the stage. Stephanie, we're doing a lot with the GeoTech Center to try and embrace the mission of championing positive pathways forward. And I was wondering if you could maybe share what we're doing to empower women in tech, policy discussions, and leadership discussions locally, nationally, and globally.
Thanks so much, David. I am super excited to share with you all our agenda for women in tech. Specifically, we are kicking it off this week with a special GeoTech Hour, where we will hear from 4 women who serve on the GeoTech Commission and who've paved the way for science and technology leadership among public, private, and research sectors. Each one is also making significant contributions to diversity, inclusion, and workforce development and policy and tech through their respective roles. I believe, David, and I know that you feel the same way, that in order for the GeoTech Decade to be truly prosperous and peaceful for all, we have to see more women lead, especially in tech policy and entrepreneurship.
Agree wholeheartedly, Stephanie, particularly because as we've seen empirically, you actually have better performance when you have equal turn taking amongst people, shared active listening, and a higher ratio of women to men. That's why we're so glad to be recognizing all these leaders here today. And as we look towards the GeoTech Decade, we're really focusing on how we can make sure people have access to opportunities, digital literacy, and the infrastructure necessary to succeed. So Stephanie, I'd be interested in your thoughts about the priorities we should have to ensure women have access to economic opportunities, education, and the ability to lead for the decade forward.
Yeah, of course, we have to acknowledge that the recent pandemic has had a really tremendous negative impact on women professionally. About 1 in 4 women are considering downshifting their careers. But at the same time, women's leadership has outperformed male-led countries in responding to crises such as COVID-19, showing the prowess of women to lead when given the opportunity. So now more than ever, we need to be prioritizing giving women the opportunity to lead through concrete work and learning opportunities in the most promising economic and influential sectors such as STEM. That's, of course, where our work here at the GeoTech Center comes in. So women currently make up a small percent of the industry due to barriers like bias, lack of access in STEM education, as well as lack of funding. According to a 2020 World Economic Forum report, women only make up 26% of workers in data and AI roles and 15% of workers in engineering roles. We have to make sure that women not only maintain participation in the workforce and the economy, but also flourish and lead through it.
Absolutely, Stephanie. And so I'd be interested in your thoughts and the team's thoughts with the GeoTech Center in terms of where we're seeing opportunities to increase women's presence and leadership in these high-growth industries.
So the highest growth will occur when women participate and benefit fully from investment in tech and entrepreneurial ventures. One of the most important factors in ensuring women have access to leadership positions is through learning and connecting with current leaders. We really need to see them as a national resource and treasure. Role modeling of women's leadership has been shown to have a significant impact on gender equality in multiple sectors, and the women in our commission represent that. So today we'll be speaking with Teresa Carlson, the Vice President of Worldwide Public Sector at Amazon Web Services, Shirley Ann Jackson, the President of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, Susan M. Gordon, former Principal Deputy Director of National Intelligence, and U.S. Congresswoman Susan Delbene. These women are truly paving the way for future diverse women leaders. As we go into these incredible interviews, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, we ask you to be bold, be brave, and be benevolent. I'm speaking with Teresa Carlson, Vice President, Worldwide Public Sector and Industries for Amazon Web Services and Commissioner of the GeoTech Center. Teresa, thanks so much for speaking with us today.
Hi, Stephanie. It's so great to be here with you in the GeoTech Center.
Thank you so much. So Teresa, as you know, we're calling this decade the GeoTech Decade, where data and tech will advance rapidly and have disproportionate impacts on geopolitics, global competition, collaboration, and it should not go without saying, on women. How does your career and leadership experience inform how you will take on these future challenges and advancements?
Well, first of all, I love the idea of the GeoTech Decade, where we can kind of inform what we think is going to happen. It's hard to always know 10 years out because I just started my 11th year at Amazon, and that's gone by so fast, and there's been so many changes, Stephanie. And in fact, when I started my career, it's been characterized by so much dramatic change. And in 2010, I started the public sector business with a really small team, but a really big mission to provide public sector customers access to the same tools and technology that the world's most innovative companies have had in order to really pave the way for disruptive innovation and make the world a better place. And that's what we've always talked about. And today, the AWS Public Sector is a global organization. We serve tens of thousands of government agencies, educational institutions, and not-for-profits around the world in over 179 countries. And every one of my customers is going through a massive digital transformation so that they can serve their customers and their mission better, less expensive, and faster with security by design. And for example, millions of people, they earn their living in India and Africa as small-scale farmers. And according to the World Bank, a full 65% of poor working adults make a living through agriculture as of 2016. And I had this, the last time I was in India, I was amazed to see that over 70% of their population is dependent on farming. And therefore, we need to make sure we're challenging ourselves and the technology in a way that serves these individuals. And one of the biggest challenges for these individual farmers is to grow crops that will fetch a good price at market. And they don't always have insights that a large company or even large farmers would have as they grow these crops as small businesses. And we have this amazing startup called WeFarm that's using machine learning to create farmer-to-farmer knowledge through a sharing network. And this platform allows farmers to submit questions via the SMS text, and then they're answered by other farmers. And this gains the insights that allow them to adopt best practices and learn the latest agricultural news and insights, and to really help maximize their income across farming. And another great example, Stephanie's in the aerospace industry, which is one of my IBUs, we call it, our industry business units, that we started this business just in June of 2020. And with aerospace, we're trying to use cloud computing to literally help bring the world closer together. And one of our customers, Boom Supersonic, is designing and manufacturing the world's fastest and most sustainable commercial aircraft. And Boom's Overture supersonic airliner is going to roll out in 2025 and fly more than 500 transatlantic routes in half the time. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm really looking forward to that. And also, just once they've done that, then they're going to launch from New York to London, and that's only going to take three and a half hours. And that sounds amazing to me from someone who was traveling over 70% of the time almost, and transatlantic is 6 to 8 hours depending on which direction you're going. So transformations like these, Stephanie, are just getting started. So for the next 10 years, I think it's going to be unimaginable even right now what we're going to be able to see. And it's really going to surprise and excite us all in our imagination and dream of what we'll be seeing 10 years from now.
Supersonic travel does sound absolutely incredible. It's exciting to think that that could be part of the GeoTech decade ahead. Your answer that really illuminates the inherent challenges we'll face, from ensuring everyone has basic access to the economy through farming and managing and accessing new forms of transportation. So what I'm wondering is, how can we set women up for success as leaders who advance people, prosperity, and peace in the next decade?
Well, Stephanie, one of the things that keeps me awake at night is the fear that women will never get the chance to use the incredible technology that we're creating and exist to leave their positive impact on the world. And we just got to make sure we're all working together to make sure that they are going to be able to use that technology. And I've been concerned by the data that I've been seeing this last year, because in the US, 5.4 million women lost their jobs between February of 2020 and December of 2020. And that's 55% of all net US job losses in that time period. And in fact, internationally, if you want to look at international global statistic, the World Bank, that only 46.9% of all women were employed in the labor force in 2020. And if you go back to 1990, there was 51%. So we're going the wrong direction. So we're going to have to change that. So that's one big area that we've really got to think about. And women accounted for the entirety of all 140,000 net jobs of the U.S. economy lost in December of 2020. So that just is astounding to me, and we've really got to stop the bleeding here. And I think we've got to set ambitious goals to solve these problems. So really the three ideas, Stephanie, that I'd like to kind of drive to here is, again, let's go back. First, let's set ambitious goals to solve the problems. And at Amazon, we recently announced a commitment to train 29 million people around the world with cloud skills by 2025. And this is a really big number, so it's going to take us along with our partners, but we are really serious about achieving this number. And we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars and partnerships toward this effort. And the second thing is you have to answer big questions with big solutions. And because we're often surprised about the impact that you can make really as an individual and through these programs. And I'll share a quick story actually. There was an individual, a female, Rowenda Sabaho, who spent 15 years in baggage handling at Amsterdam's International Airport. And she decided she was going to make a career change. So she went through our Restart program, which is it's a very accelerated 12-week program that teaches employable cloud skills. And now today she successfully completed that course, and she's an IT specialist now at Randstad Group. And when she talks about it, she describes her change in career as just, one of the most exciting things that she's ever done. But think in a 12-week period, she was able to get all the basics of technology so that she could really drive toward a new career. And the last thing I would say is we want to set an example within your own organization. So it's not just set big goals or realign education, but you also want to be an example in your own organization. And you have to take everyday actions that make a change. And this is really important, Stephanie, for senior leaders to really understand. This comes from the top. And in order for these changes to take place, you've got to be looking at all aspects. And this also comes from the data that you actually have. And leaders can be very purposeful in ensuring hiring and promotions fairly and making sure that they're really fostering an inclusive culture through their senior leaders being really vocal champions of diversity. And I like to tell everybody, I did not have the data I needed till almost 3 years ago. I would talk about this a lot, but I really didn't have my data. So today, fast forward, I have an amazing HR group that's helped me get all the data I need. And I can really look at what are the shortcomings within my own organization. What am I learning about what I'm seeing? And what do I do about it to revalidate the data that I'm seeing in order to move it in the right direction? And again, I would say you need the data, you need a great HR partner, you need to be accountable yourself every day on what you're doing. And I think that we can really drive change. And one of the last things, Stephanie, I'd like to say is at home, I also think that we need to be role models. My sons and I are adult, they have their own business today. And I was so encouraged. My son, who's the CEO of his company, and my other son works with him, helping him do all the business development. And they talk about hiring women and making sure that they have diversity at all levels. And I say to myself, I hope I did something right modeling at home. So I think that we all have to be courageous around our conversations and don't be shy if you see things going in the wrong direction to really bring it up to the top again. And again, bold goals, make sure educationally there's alignment where there can be driving change, and be an example in your own organization.
Teresa, thank you so much for speaking with us today. This was an incredible conversation. Really looking forward to having more conversations to come.
I look forward to Stephanie, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen with our GeoTech Decade from now. We'll come back and see what happened 10 years from now.
I'm speaking with Honorable Shirley Ann Jackson, President of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and Commissioner of the GeoTech Center. Dr. Jackson, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Well, my great pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So we're calling this decade the GeoTech Decade, where data and tech will advance rapidly and have disproportionate impacts on geopolitics, global competition, collaboration, and it shouldn't go without saying, on women. How does your career and leadership experience inform how you will take on these future challenges and advancements?
Well, thank you. First, as you have said, we have to understand that the GeoTech Decade is driven by data, advanced computation, and broader technology advances all coming together. Now, some talk about the coalescence of the digital, the physical, and the biological realms that is having an impact on everything from geopolitics and global competition to how people live and work as individuals, and of course, how they collaborate. And that has been the focus of the GeoTech Center work, and this coalescence then has already brought great opportunity as we look at the marriage of the digital with the genomics revolution, supported by advanced computational capabilities, and the experimental investigations in the biological realm that have brought us the rapid development of COVID-19 vaccines and other therapies, such as monoclonal and polyclonal antibodies. At the same time, the emergence of zoonotic diseases such as COVID-19 tells us that we have to create even better data sharing and collaborative activity to create sentinels, as it were, to give us early warnings. And this is especially true when we can end up in a situation with intersecting vulnerabilities with cascading consequences when there's a triggering event. We're living through such a disruptive time right now with the emergence of COVID-19, where we see the disease revealing the vulnerabilities in societies, the socio-political impacts, and even geopolitical competition. So times of disruption and sometimes socio-political disruption give us unique opportunities to move ahead. In my own education and career, I greatly benefited from having grown up in another era of extreme flux when society was rapidly changing with the civil rights movement and later the women's movement, and when technology was advancing at an astonishing pace as evidenced by the first human missions to the moon. So I would characterize my career as one in which unexpected windows of opportunity have opened suddenly. And from a young age, I have been blessed with the courage to step through those windows, to take on new roles in new sectors and to serve in new ways. Two of the most important windows opened for me due to the essential confluence of the 1954 Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision that desegregated the Washington, D.C. public schools a year later, and then the Soviet launch of the first artificial satellite, Sputnik 1, which sparked the space race and shifted the focus of education in the public schools strongly to mathematics and science. And this played to my abilities and allowed me to accelerate and to achieve. And those academic achievements led me to MIT as an undergraduate and graduate student, where even in what was then a difficult situation, I had the opportunity to demonstrate academic excellence and leadership across a broad front in such a way that it has led to great opportunity in my career, from MIT to research in theoretical elementary particle physics at the Fermi Lab and CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, to research in theoretical condensed matter physics at Bell Labs, where I had a number of research successes. This also led to appointments by New Jersey governors to important high-level positions, to service on corporate boards, and ultimately to a presidential appointment by President Bill Clinton to the chairmanship of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Now, my tenure at the NRC, as we call it, occurred against another backdrop of change and disruption following the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in the Ukraine in 1986, which itself followed the accident at 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania in 1979. This created an opportunity for me to lead in making changes in how the NRC carried out its mission through risk-informed performance-based regulation and the creation of the license renewal process, which has led to the license extension for 89 commercial reactors as of early 2018 in the United States. Now, that time of change also coincided with great geopolitical change, with the end of apartheid in South Africa, and with the aftermath of the breakup of the Soviet Union. Needless to say, that great time of upheaval from a geopolitical perspective necessarily caused an intense focus on both nuclear safety and nuclear nonproliferation, especially in the newly independent states of the former Soviet Union and in post-apartheid South Africa. In those instances, we helped to create new regulatory regimes, including new laws and regulations, and trained nuclear inspectors, while simultaneously working on securing the control of weapons-grade enriched uranium from the Soviet-era nuclear programs in the newly independent states. Finally, I came at a time of necessary change here to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute when I assumed its presidency in 1999. And during my tenure here, I've worked to enhance the stature and global reach and impact of the institution while keeping my fingers on the pulse of industry by serving on the boards of leading corporations, including IBM and FedEx, and leading nonprofits and associations, including the Smithsonian Institution, where I was vice chair of the Board of Regents. I have done so while each of these institutions have faced disruptive change, both due to technological advancement and the attendant national and broader geopolitical changes. I maintain my commitment to policymaking in science and national security. In 2009, President Barack Obama appointed me to the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, or PCAST, where I served for over 5 years until 2014, when the President asked me to serve as co-chair of the President's Intelligence Advisory Board, which assesses issues pertaining to the quality, quantity, and adequacy of intelligence activities, an important role at a fraught time, given the rise of non-state actors and the threat of cyber attacks of many kinds. Now, my focus in these areas has contributed and continued with the work of the GeoTech Commission of the Atlantic Council. The GeoTech Commission is doing critical work to balance the opportunities that come from scientific and technological advancement with the risks that must be addressed in the attendant geopolitical challenges they bring. I've been happy to be a part of the work of the Commission and to bring to it what I've learned from my various leadership roles and, frankly, my education as a theoretical physicist. Because as a physicist, one develops an ability to look at systems that seem to be chaotic, not to impose order, but to figure out a way to understand their complexities, to see beyond individual phenomena, to find underlying principles that allow us to move forward. And now we're at another moment when a willingness to seize the opportunities arising out of disruption is going to distinguish leaders, including young women leaders. The complexity of the moment requires drawing on talent from everyone and from everywhere.
Wow, thank you. I'm so struck by your remarks and comments on how, just reflecting back on how science changes in tandem with society. And I couldn't help but think about the Black Lives Matter movement as you were speaking, and wanting to know what are your hopes for change for the future, whether it's in terms of scientific advancement or social advancement, where, you talked about having a unique insight into opportunity and patterns. What do you think we can capitalize on in this unique moment in time that we're in terms of making forward progress?
Well, I've been one who believes that while science and technological innovation won't solve every problem. They do offer opportunity and complexity. They offer opportunity from an economic perspective, from a geopolitical leadership perspective, but they offer risks as well. And the way one has to move forward in such a situation is to draw on the complete talent. And so I start there. There's a lot of talk about innovation, but there's no innovation without innovators. And I long have worried about what I term a quiet crisis, which is our national failure to bring women and underrepresented minorities into science and technology in sufficient numbers, which could eventually cost the United States its dominance in innovation. There are signs of progress, because after all, the United States now has its first woman vice president, who happens to be a woman of color. And President Biden's cabinet appointees and nominees include many women. And certainly at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, we are educating many dynamic young women whom we expect to be leaders in science and technology. But while women still struggle to be promoted in corporations, pre-pandemic, they were starting businesses at a torrid rate. Nationally, the number of women-owned businesses grew by 21% from between 2014 and 2019, and firms owned by women of color grew 43%, even though those women-founded companies attract only a fraction of the available venture capital. But now we have asset managers such as BlackRock calling out companies with very few women on their boards. They understand this is a performance issue for companies. And this has also been taken up by State Street. But a recent Lean In McKinsey survey found that more than 1 in 4 women were considering putting their careers into a lower gear or leaving the workplace entirely. And so we have to really focus. And so what is important, again, is bringing the full complement of talent on board. Together, women and underrepresented minorities actually represent the majority in the country and in the society. And we need them to ensure that the remarkable advances that we're seeing, particularly in computation and in the life sciences, are developed in a way that they benefit the greatest number of people. So think about it. One only need think about the contributions of women, ranging from the work in the early days in the US space program of Katherine Johnson of NASA, to the work of Grace Hopper, who created the COBOL language. So she did very seminal work in computer science. To Alicia Bowler Davis, who was the executive vice president for global manufacturing and labor relations at General Motors Corporation, and now is vice president of global customer fulfillment at Amazon. To Linda Jojo, who is executive vice president for technology and chief digital officer at United Airlines. To Jenny Rometty, recently retired chairman, president, and CEO at IBM. To Admiral retired Michelle Howard, the former vice chief of naval operations and the first woman to become a 4-star admiral, and of course, the first woman of color. And so if one looks at their leadership in their respective fields of endeavor, these women's lives make the point that talent exists everywhere, and that one has to bring that talent into helping us advance in this technological era that we're talking about in the GeoTech decade.
Thanks for just shouting out and calling out those incredible women and their incredible careers. I mean, I just get shivers every time I hear about those kinds of leaders. And I'm curious what you think about the role of leadership in all of this. How do leaders ensure that we are including everybody, that we're bringing these voices forward, that we're giving the next generation those opportunities that you described as being so necessary?
Well, obviously, I believe leadership is critical. Many technological advances sit on a knife's edge. Then it is up to us whether those technologies are developed and used for good or ill. For example, under the leadership of former IBM President, Chairman, and CEO Jenny Rometty, IBM began a transformation of that 100-plus-year-old company from an equipment and semiconductor device-driven company to one that really focuses on advanced approaches in technology, such as hybrid cloud and quantum computing, while importantly putting into place a series of principles designed to eliminate bias in artificial intelligence and to illuminate how AI systems make their decisions. And on the life sciences side, I would be remiss if I didn't mention collaborators Dr. Jennifer Doudna and Dr. Emmanuel Charpentier, who were awarded the 2020 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for their discovery of the CRISPR-Cas9 genetic scissors. As you know, CRISPR technologies are poised to transform medicine and to alleviate a great deal of human suffering. Yet, they've already been used for heritable human genome editing. In other words, making changes to human germ cells before or after fertilization that will then be passed on to subsequent generations with potential unintended consequences, and of course, creating considerable ethical, legal, and moral issues. And Dr. Doudna herself, and this is about the role of leaders, has said that, and I quote, "The temptation to tinker with the human germline is not going away." That is her quote. And so wise leadership is demanded here, including leadership in the policy realm. And in order to have that right policy framework and to have us come down on the right side of the knife edge, diverse perspectives are critical.
Dr. Jackson, thank you so much for speaking with us today. This was an incredible conversation. I'm really grateful for your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for having me. It's been fun talking with you.
Absolutely, thank you. I'm speaking with Honorable Sue Gordon, former Principal Deputy Director of National Intelligence and a Commissioner of the GeoTech Center. Sue, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Stephanie, it's delightful to be here. Thank you for having me.
So Sue, we're calling this decade the GeoTech Decade, where data and tech will advance rapidly and have disproportionate impacts on geopolitics, global competition, collaboration, and it shouldn't go without saying, on women. I was hoping you could tell us a bit about how your career and leadership experiences inform how you will take on these future challenges and advancements.
Well, that's a great question. I came to GeoTech late in my career. I've been a career officer at the Central Intelligence Agency for 30 plus years when I got the opportunity to be the Deputy Director of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. And I have to tell you, it really changed everything about how I saw national security, how I saw intelligence, how I saw geopolitics. And my big takeaway from that time, and it's something I've carried with me since, is that anything put in the context of space and time is more understandable. So this notion of being able to see how the Earth works is really impactful. So that's the first. Now, for most of my career, or certainly the latter half of my career, I had been involved in really understanding how the digital environment was changing the nature of relationships. And the combination to me of a digital environment, understanding that we are more connected digitally, and my newfound understanding and real depth in geospatial intelligence made me see a couple things very clearly that have played out in the last year. The first is we are connected. We span space and time. And even though there's a physicality to everything that happens, because of digital, that physicality is much more tactile, much more relevant, and much more impactful in every decision. So this combination of a digital world and the fact that it is still fundamentally physical and geospatial is a really interesting way to see it. And then the third thing is, I've been an intelligence officer for a long time, and then I get dumped into this world that is increasingly open. And what GeoTech allows you to see is not only are the technologies increasingly open, but the problems are increasingly open. So as a leader, you have me, who I think I'm pretty smug about my leadership abilities. I've climbed the ladder, done big things, but now you have someone who is recognizing the reach that I have in every position because of this connected and because that I understand the physicality of the world.
Yeah, I'd love to talk a bit more about the sense of going from being in a sort of private, maybe we have, some of us have this information, to now a lot more of us have access to this global information. How do you think we can responsibly steward that technology and use that global information better? I think that's just a really important question for us at the center, is how do we try to use this data that's become available to help people without overly infringing? And I think you probably have a really important perspective to share on that. So I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
I think that's a great question. So to me, trust and truth are the foundations of free and open society. And so think about that. It is really hard for evil to succeed in the light. And so at our best, I think what our community and what GeoTech offers is that ability to kind of make apparent what is, and to show that in a way that you have actually made more equivalent the knowledge, rather than allowing people to use knowledge disproportionately for their advantage. I think it puts a lot of pressure on us to make sure that when we put technology into our discipline, that it can't be corrupted, that we can assure that GeoTech is secure and can't be misused. But I think its potential for showing the way to steal part of the motto of NGA is really exciting at this moment, particularly when you think about what we can do socially worldwide in terms of what we can make available to relatively disadvantaged populations. And again, trading on my history as an intelligence officer, what that means about furthering democratic principles. So I think we have a real opportunity here to be a force for good.
I completely agree. I'm curious if you have one particular use case that you think gives us an example of really how this technology can be used and how geospatial information can be used kind of in that for good space.
Well, I think there are a couple ones. One, and my examples are going to be more governmental in nature because I'm new at this private sector thing. But one was with the Ebola outbreak. And the governmental classified systems had a lot of information, but we were keeping it to ourselves because that's what we had historically done, using it for our advantage. And my former boss, Robert Cardello, and the NGA said, you know, we should make this openly available. And when you took our resources about not only imagery, what was happening, but putting geospatial framework on locations when events were happening, it really, I think, contributed to how we understood what was happening with the spread of that disease. And you've only seen that grow over time. So that's one. And then a second is just what can be, how we understand what's going on in the Arctic. So from climate issues to societal issues, and then there's certainly the geopolitical and the military issues are all there. But this combination of making what can be seen about the Earth available broadly. And then I think the last thing, Stephanie, I'll say, I think this is attributed to Bob Gates through the Gates Foundation. One of the things he says is it is hard to have a society if you don't have an address. Right. So again, that's one of the things that we add to lesser developed countries. And if we can make that more openly available, it's a good day.
Yes, I completely agree. I'd also love to hear from you about how we can set up women for success as leaders who advance people, prosperity, and peace in the next decade as well.
So I'm biased about women. I think we come predisposed to be interdisciplinary, and so these issues that we now see so clearly are ones that will be well served by having women in leadership, because I just think it's one of the ways that we think about things. If I were going to give some straight up advice, I'd start by saying be technical. You know, this is a world, 2021 and beyond, it's a technical world. And so have technical acumen. Now, the cool thing about GeoTech is it's kind of accessible STEM. Because it has a physical component, math and physics and science and all those things play into what we're doing, but they're tactile and you can feel them. So, but be technical. The second is, I would tell women, want to lead. Listen, leading is hard. It's scary. It's big. You have to deal with pesky humans. There are people who have different imperatives, but want to lead. Don't just see the moment and have an opinion about it. See the moment and say, gosh, I can do something about it. And this notion of doing something, again, couples really well with this discipline. The next thing I'd say is kind of related to that, want to do. I think thought leadership is fantastic. But leading accomplishment, particularly in a world where we are right now, where we're going to have to create new. We've kind of run out of evolving from where we were, and we've got to create some new things. So women, get in there and want to do. And a practical piece of advice there is, when you're within an organization, seek line leadership. Because of our ability to think and ideational fluency, a lot of times we get sucked into staff positions. Those are great to give you perspective on what really matters. But what organizations really value, but really turn the earth, are people in line positions. So don't wait too long to jump into the line and do some backbreaking physical work of leading effort. And I can't think of a municipality, a locality, a state, a federal, a company, an NGO that doesn't now include their own geospatial unit, because they've all figured out they're connected. So the opportunities are so resplendent, but be a doer.
Sue, thank you so much for speaking with us today. As always with these conversations, I leave more excited about the GeoTech Decade than I am concerned, although I'm excited that we can really position women as leaders to make incredible change. Thanks again for your time.
Thanks, Stephanie.
I'm speaking with Congresswoman Susan Delbene, Commissioner of the GeoTech Center. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Happy to be here.
So we're calling this decade the GeoTech Decade, where data and tech will advance rapidly and have a disproportionate impact on geopolitics, global competition, collaboration, and it really shouldn't go without saying, on women. How does your career and leadership experience inform how you will take on these future challenges and advancements?
Well, we've seen so much change. When I started working in technology, which really dates me now because it's been so long, we didn't have, for example, email or the ability to work from home. Technology was much more siloed, and definitely folks working in technology, it was anything but a diverse community. I was a young mother. In fact, I remember being pregnant, working in a tech company, and I was very much an anomaly. So we go from a place where we had many folks we did not have diversity. Folks were pretty much the same age, were young, and were kind of working in a much more kind of cloistered environment, to where we are today, where technology is ubiquitous, where it impacts every aspect of our life, and really is not an isolated industry. It's a part of every industry. So important that we realize the important contributions that a diverse community make when we have a diverse community using technology, which is different than where I started. We've made some progress, but I know from even over the years, that we still struggle to make sure that women's voices are heard, that women feel like there are opportunities when we're talking about technology. And so it's going to continue to be so important for us to make sure that we're looking for those diverse views, diverse opinions, and those diverse ideas that are going to lead to new innovations that solve problems all around the world. So much opportunity ahead of us, and a lot of challenges as well. I think the last thing is technology was always something people saw as a positive. Now we've also seen some of the challenges that technology brings, and it's going to be even more important for folks to be engaged and involved to make sure we have technology that is equitable, that holds up to human rights and civil rights around the world. So a lot ahead, and I think we have an incredible opportunity if we engage a diverse community.
Absolutely. I'm just honestly so glad to hear that diversity is an issue that you're thinking about a lot. What are the kinds of things that you think you can do as one of the leaders of our country to really help advocate for diversity? What kinds of issues and things are you advocating for really to be thinking about how we actually steward this for women and diverse folks and be more inclusive?
Well, first we have to make sure that everyone has access to the same opportunities. In Congress, I represent a district that is a global technology hub, and then you go drive about an hour away from that part of my district to another area where we don't have rural broadband or even good cell service. So if you think about kids growing up in an area where they don't have basic broadband access, their ability to get that same education and the experiences that come with that are much more diminished. So when we talk about equality and opportunity, we have to make sure that we have the foundational elements in place. And one thing is making sure there's access. And we also have to make sure that folks know they can see a path for themselves. And that's why I think for as women, it's so important that we make sure that young women and girls understand the opportunities that are available to them, that they know that their ideas are valued and that matter, that they have access to strong mentoring and professional networks, because the more they see other women in leadership roles, the more they see themselves in those roles. So I do think that engaging students across our country, then especially that have been traditionally underrepresented, is going to be important, because when they see that path and their ideas come to bear, that opens up huge potential, huge opportunity.
Completely agree. One of the things I love about working with our commissioners is that you all, each in your own right, have, I think, been pioneers. You personally, early in your career, worked in technology. I just was curious if you could speak a little bit more about that experience and what your takeaways are, and if you see the landscape is different now, if you think that there are still really lessons learned. I just would love to hear more about your earlier career in tech and how that informs kind of how you think about your work today.
Well, early on, as I said, we really didn't have a diverse community. We had very few women, and especially women with families. In fact, really not many people at all who are working then had families. Most people started working in technology straight out of college and went straight to work. And there was kind of this ethic that if you were a serious worker, you were at work all day, all night. And it made it very hard for folks to have families and to go home. Remember, today you might be able to, and maybe this isn't always a good thing, take technology with you wherever you go. You have your phone, you can respond. But when I was starting, when you needed to do your work, you needed to physically be at work. And if we think about the opportunities that we have now, we have a lot more flexibility. During this pandemic, we've seen many folks be able to telework, and that's opened up opportunities. Clearly, the pandemic represents huge challenges for our families, but we also know that there is a role that telework will play going forward from the learnings that we've had now, because people can be more flexible. We didn't have flexibility when I was starting in my career in technology. Also, there was definitely a bias against women's voices. There was kind of this culture of whoever spoke the loudest won. And I think that it's been very important that we see changes in leadership, that every voice is heard, that it's not who yells the loudest, but actually understanding who has a great idea and that those ideas aren't dismissed. So there we've made progress there, but definitely there's more progress to be made. And I feel very important. It's very important for me to make sure that I do my part to help create those opportunities for young women coming forward, because we all should make sure, as I think kind of the analogy has been used in the past, we always make sure that we have a ladder for others to follow, so we continue to grow and make sure that we really are allowing women's voices to be heard, not only in technology, but in every sector that technology touches, which pretty much is all over right now. It's not very limited anymore.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think we're really setting a high bar for what it means to be inclusive and to truly make sure everyone's participating and leading, or given an opportunity to lead. I wanted to just talk a little bit more about that. How can we set women up for success as leaders who advance people prosperity and peace, which is our GeoTech mission? What do you think we can do?
It starts out at an early age, making sure that we have great educational opportunities for young women. Make sure that folks know that their talents are important and that they can succeed. Everyone learns in different ways, and your different skills that you bring are valued. They don't have to be. It doesn't have to be a cookie cutter set of skills. I'm a big believer in STEAM. We talk about STEM: science, technology, engineering, and math. STEAM: science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, because really technology is about, for it to be effective in all of the different use cases that are out there today, for it to be effective, people have to be able to engage with it. And that's the user interface that someone might engage with. I think that people who bring the arts and that really incredible skill to create those interfaces is just as important as the person who might be writing the code in the background. And we need to understand that to meet the diversity of needs that we have and the new ideas in terms of how technology can solve problems, that all of those skills are necessary. So people need to understand that, and educators need to understand that, and we need to create those pathways. So our schools need that help, our educators need that help, and we need to make sure our students know the incredible potential that they bring to the table with a diversity of skills.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and honestly for being a commissioner at the GeoTech Center, because I believe our center is well positioned to really work towards and advocate for those issues and ensure that we are thinking about STEAM, we are thinking about how we're developing young talent. So I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a great topic, and I look forward to what's coming ahead.
Wow, those were very impressive leaders, not to mention women leaders. And I really appreciated the opportunity to learn more about them, Stephanie, as you discussed their roles, what they had done, and their experiences as leaders in a changing world. I'm also excited that hopefully this is a launch of a new series in which we'll learn more about other women leaders and how we can encourage leadership at the local level, national level, and global for a better world for us all.
Thanks so much, David. It's been a real pleasure and privilege to conduct these interviews. As you can see, we have plenty of work ahead, but really incredible wealth of leaders to tap into. To our audience, if you are interested in learning more about the incredible leadership on the GeoTech Commission, please check out our link below. And again, thank you so much for joining us.